In today's video, I'm going to share with you 4 strategies to enhance your creativity, to enhance your ability to think a little bit outside of the box. And this is something that's highly valued in the modern world of work, because in the modern world of work, so many people think very similar to each other. Whether they're in a division or in the same department, they have a tendency to think the same because they're all kind of doing the same thing. And unless they intentionally broaden their perspective, broaden their knowledge, broaden their experiences, thinking differently than the mold isn't easy. So in this video, 4 strategies to do that. The first strategy is simply to go to a bookstore and then ask someone who you just kind of randomly meet there to recommend to you either a book or a magazine that they think, that you'll read, and then another one that they think that you would definitely not read. The first book that they recommend or the first magazine that they recommend will tell you a little bit about how you come across and how people's perhaps perceptions of you shaped on just taking a look at you determine how they think of you and their perspective towards you. That's the first book. But the second book, chances are, quite often, will shed light into something perhaps that is definitely not part of your regular thinking. I did this and I was recommended a book on sports, which definitely matches what I'm interested in. And then the second book, something that I would never be interested in, was a recommendation on a book on the crafts. And sure enough, when I was recommended that, I was like, oh, this is not something I would ever read. But when then I opened it up, it expanded my perspective a little bit. The second strategy is to choose an event in a neighborhood that you generally do not frequent. I did this once when I was living in Chicago. I chose an event. It was a art exhibit at an event in the south side of Chicago, a part of Chicago that I generally didn't frequent. And I remember very distinctly when I went there, I was the only non-African American individual in that group. And definitely it wasn't an event that would normally come and appear on my social media feeds. So I chose it just by looking through meetups or just one of those kind of online event planning sites. I looked based on neighborhood. I found an event just kind of randomly and I attended. And it was such a cool event. And I knew that I would never have ever experienced or seen anything like that before had I not made that intentional effort to pick a specific neighborhood that I would never ever be and then choose an event to go to. So I challenge you to do that. The third strategy is essentially twofold. The first part of it is to select a restaurant of origin that you've never been to before. So if you typically go for Italian and French and Chinese food, then I challenge you to eat somewhere that serves Indian or Serbian or Zimbabwean food. That's the first part of the challenge, right? That's a way to try something that you've never had before. And that'll expand your mind when you go into the environment, but also when you experience the food. The second strategy that's related to that is to, if you go to the same restaurant that you generally do, order something that you generally don't. Really force yourself to move away. If you usually just have the chicken or the beef, to order something vegetarian. If you usually just have a main course, order maybe 2 or 3 starters or just have the salad or something instead. Just order something different. And you'll find yourself kind of pulling back to what you're used to, your good old faithfuls. But that act of intentionally choosing something different will expose you to something new and interesting, and perhaps will turn into a habit of intentionally exploring different places, different foods that you can try that will expand your thinking and your experiences. The fourth strategy is to go to networking events and approach people who seem friendly, who you feel you have nothing in common with, and approach them with a curious mindset. A curious mindset is going in there and trying to figure out what's in that person's mind. How do they think? How do they see the world? What's their perspective? And you do that by listening and asking questions. Sure, interject your own thoughts here and there so it doesn't sound like an inquisition, but simply go in there with a curious mindset and ask people who you feel you have nothing in common with that you would otherwise generally not meet in your everyday routine at these events, and just speak with them with a curious mindset. So there you have it. 4 strategies to expand your mind, expand your thinking, to become more creative so you can think a little bit differently, to become a valuable asset in the work environment. Good luck.